Greetings. Well, I had a comment on the last video from one of the viewers about how gardening empowers him. And, you know, forest from the trees, I guess. Maybe I'm too close to the subject. I had never really thought too much about this in the past. I guess I knew it. Yeah, because I said, oh, yeah, absolutely, you're right. But I never really made the connection really of putting this together, because when I look back across the channel, I realized that for ages, a lot of the topics I've been covering are actually to empower people, to empower you to prune your raspberries properly, to get the peach tree pruned so it yields right, to put alternative energy systems up on the house so you have your own energy production, how to invest like a gardener or a farmer, so that you can, buy land, for instance. These are all empowering things by default, and then maybe by intention over time. Empowerment has actually become an important aspect of what we're doing here. What I mean is that where you yourself feel power, that you have control over your situation, that things are not completely random and chaotic, that at least say with the garden, in the sense of food production, which is a very important aspect of human beings. Yeah, food is so important, not quite as important as air, water. Okay, well, food comes pretty much right after that, I guess. Sleep was in there to weigh up the basic things that we have to have. So when you can produce your own food, well, I guess that is pretty empowering, man. You got a lot of control over the situation. So many of us, have to go down to the supermarket and, and shell out, and whatever the cost is and whatever the quality happened to be at that moment, and so on, is what you end up with. So it is a very empowering activity. If you, you look at a seed catalog, you pick out your tomato, the seed comes in the mail, you put the seed into the soil with a certain amount of faith that it's going to grow, and boom, it does, and you go, oh, wow, how nice, I have a tomato plant, and tomato plant, you carry it out into the garden, and you plant it with some compost and manure, and you watch for the bugs and all that stuff, and then you put a commitment. You're putting a life commitment into that tomato seed, right? Oh, and then the yield comes on. Of course, they're beautiful. It's productive. Just the production, is like, wow. Connection down to, what the earth really does, is that one little seed. All of a sudden, wow, you got the whole rack in the cellar full of spaghetti sauce for the winter because of that one little seed, That is pretty empowering, come to think of it. For me, I think what it demonstrates to me is how just one little human thought, when it's connected to the chain of events here on the planet, to the biology, to the environment, that you get a thought moving, and you start to push on something. And it's very perpetual, is that it starts swinging on its own after a bit, that there's so much energy here in the planet. All you do is connect with your thought process. I was thinking the other day how nice it'd be if we could turn human thought into electrical energy rather than having to extract materials for, photovoltaics and batteries and stuff. Well, actually, human thought does have an enormous amount of energy reaction here on the planet. It's just not quite in the same way, It's to take tree seedlings, put 1,000 of them out into what had been a grassy field, and well, in 15 years find yourself with a pine forest full of birds that eat pine seeds, and squirrels and mushrooms underneath, no more grass, all go to pine needles. Entire environment changes when we do this. And, the deer move in to browse on the pine trees, and a whole environmental reaction, a chain reaction starts. For me, again, very empowering. It's also humbling because we take so much credit a lot of times in what we do, but wow, when it comes to humans interacting with the natural forces here in the world, so much of what happens is just us kind of going, nudging things. We nudge, as people, and we get stuff started. Things start to go. Once they start going, well, we can take credit for that tomato plant, but yeah, I kind of, the Polish farmers in the area of Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, where I lived for a long time, had a peculiar way. If you were to give them a plant, which of course I've always had lots of plants around, so I was giving plants to people. I'd give a plant to Mrs. Kowalski, for instance, and well, she'd never say anything. She would accept it. That was it. One day, I was sitting around the bar, talking to one of the wives of the old Polish farmers of the neighborhood about this thing, and well, what they told me is that in their belief system, God makes plants. God's responsible for all those plants, and that if I was to give you a plant and you were to thank me for the plant, you're thanking the wrong person or the wrong creature, whatever. You need to thank God for your plants, is in their mythology. And well, it was actually pretty logical. If you understand it, no problem. Some of these things that come up out of different cultures sometimes are so inscrutable to us. So I had to actually ask somebody why that was. No one ever says thank you for the tomato plants I give them. When it comes to feeling empowered, no, I'm not a psychologist, and I certainly don't want to get involved in doing motivational videos. Thank you. No. But I suppose not all of us are gifted with the idea of self-worth and empowerment by people around us. That's where you can initially pick this up. If you have, parents and relatives that are, well, kind enough and maybe smart enough to make sure that, you know what your value is as a young child, then I guess you kind of grow up in it, If it's reinforced enough, you sort of grow up in the idea that you got value, you can make things happen, but not all of us grew up that way. Sometimes, well, we were just sort of ignored, Other times it's worse, we were told we were worthless. It's got to be a lot to overcome. I'm not really, well, I've been called a lot of things in my life, but worthless was not one of them. Some of the things I've been called I deserved, for sure. But worthless was not one of them. And, I thank my great-grandma. My great-grandma was the one, I suppose, that really helped me out initially as a little child on her lap. She's all sticks and skin and bones, old lady. She used to, intense blue eyes, though. Wow. Look right through your soul. Would set me there on her lap, and she'd tell me the stories of her husband, my great-grandfather, what a important person he was in the development of American history. He's the, and well, she'd always remind me that I had his namesake, and that I had what it took, being a member of the family to make things happen. I don't know if she knew what she was doing, but she certainly left a mark on me as a small child to actually believe that stuff she told me. And I believe it has served me well throughout my life. Yeah, and I believe it's one of the reasons that I am who I am, doing what I'm doing, and all that. It was guidance as a child that my great grandma had given me. Well, we don't all have that, so some of us, I guess, are going to have to get out in the garden, and you're going to have to find empowerment out there between the carrots, certainly by raising your own food, maybe having more than you need, so you have abundance. Abundance is nice, and then you can, sell it at the farmer's market, or give it to your friends, or feed the homeless, or whatever you want to do with abundance. But abundance is a wonderful thing, and it definitely empowers us to realize. That's again, it kind of freaks me out a little bit. Yeah, one little seed, one little thought. I'm going to grow a tomato. Wow, right? Whole cellar full of jars. Aloha, folks. Hang loose.